What would it feel like to be truly, deeply happy, regardless of your circumstances? Did you know that happiness is a choice and not a result? That you can create your life on purpose? Join us now to learn more. This is the Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. And here's your host, mindset coach, and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott.
Hello and welcome. Happy Friday. Welcome to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. And today we are talking about try it on and see if it fits. It's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? So before we get too far into things, I just want to help you understand what we do on the show every week. This has been sort of an evolution, and it's been really fun for me to experience and sort of watch these things happening. But what we do on the show every week is we talk about our mindset issues. So specifically, I call it the subliminal soundtrack, and I'll give you a quick rundown of that in just a moment. But we talk about our mindset issues. We talk about understanding and recognizing our unique beauty, our value, the contribution that we are to the world every single Friday. So if you are in a position where you need a little bit more, positivity around you, this is a great place to be. We talk about some of the hard stuff, but we do it in a way that is helpful. We have tips, we have all kinds of stuff. And very often the show turns into a mini workshop when I didn't even plan for that to happen. So fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. So try it on and see if it fits. Have you ever ordered something online and you were so excited for it to come? Maybe it's an outfit, maybe it's a dress, maybe it's a pair of pants. I don't know. Anything. Have you ever ordered something and then when it got to you, you realized it didn't fit? It's happened to me. It's probably happened to most of us as we've gone through this pandemic, right? Because many of us have sort of gone the way of online shopping because we weren't able to get into the stores for the things that we needed. So has that ever happened to you? It's the same thing when we are trying to manifest something new into our lives. And I'm going to explain to you how that happens as we go through the show and what you can do about it when you are coming into these, sort of trying to make a choice, trying to make a decision. These things can be really hard and really heavy for us when we don't understand. Number one, we always have a choice. And number two, you're allowed to change your mind. I didn't know that for a very long time. You're allowed to change your mind. And we become different people as we go through life, don't we? Yes. And that's the hope, right? We grow, we change, we learn, we become more of who we are. We become more of, that authentic little person that came to be on this planet. Yes, we become more aligned if we're doing our work, if we are open to the learning and the growth that naturally happens. And sometimes if we're open to the things that are really, really tough, right? There's always learning. So one of the things I'm going to give you a really quick tip right now. One of the things that I've said to my son all through his life, from the time he was a very small boy, is in my humble opinion, there are no mistakes. In my humble opinion, there are learning opportunities. So as long as we learn something valuable from whatever experience or whatever mistake we've made, it wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't a waste of anything. It was a valuable learning experience. Okay, so it's that reframing, it's that putting things into a context that takes away the judgment, that takes away that big stick that most of us carry around and beat ourselves over the head with. You know the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Drop it. Just put it down. Just put it down and leave it there. All right. There is no point. It's a waste of your energy to get into that sort of judgmental space with yourself. So now we're going to get into the really good stuff in just a moment, but I want to share with you this subliminal soundtrack because it's important for us to understand this is my language. And if you're watching the show, it's important for you to understand the context of what we're talking about. So our subliminal soundtrack is this loop of messages that plays in the back of our minds all day, every day. It's made up of little bits of information that we've collected throughout the course of our lives. So every relationship you've had, every lesson you've learned, every single conversation, every experience has given you little bits of information that you've stored back there on that subliminal soundtrack. And we use that information to create our belief systems. Now, two very important things to understand about this is what we believe to be true will be true for us, even if it's based on completely incorrect information. The second is that we create our circumstances to support those belief systems that we carry. So if you find yourself stuck, if you find that no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to move forward, very often there's something back there that's causing you to create a circumstance or a blockage that is preventing you from doing so. So this is why it's so very important for us to get clear on what's happening in the back of our mind. There was a statistic I heard a couple of years ago, and I want to say that it was, I'm gonna under the number, whatever that word is. I'm going to decrease the number because I can't remember exactly what it was. So let's say there are 50,000 thoughts that go through your mind over the course of a day. Is it easy for you to identify every single one of those thoughts? Probably not. And some of them are going to be related to keeping our body functioning, like our heart beating and our lungs breathing and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of them are going to be going on in the background that we don't want to do anything about that, right? We want to let our heart keep beating. We want to keep our lungs still breathing. So we don't want to change those ones. But the other ones that are just sort of like, you're not pretty enough, or you're not smart enough, or you're not good with money, or whatever it is. Do you see what I'm saying? Those are the ones that when we identify them, we can start to shift them, because the truth of the matter is that most of that is garbage. Just a really quick example to illustrate this is this idea of body image, this idea of, how we perceive our physical being. And we can go into, and if you're somebody like me who's been around for a while, there have been a lot of media type messages that have caused a lot of us to form these judgments about what it means to be beautiful. So if my waist isn't this size, if my butt isn't this size, if I don't have, a perfectly symmetrical face, if whatever, we will find those things that cause us to have negative judgments about ourselves. But the fact of the matter is this: beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So it doesn't matter what you think about those things. There are people out there who would find them attractive. I have been really surprised, actually, since I've become single, at the number of men who appreciate a woman who is, a little bit heavier. The number of men, and very attractive men. It's interesting to me to see that, because that has challenged my belief systems. Do you understand what I'm saying? So also be open to that new information that comes to you and shifting that stuff around, right? We are able to create our own subliminal soundtrack. We can replace those messages that hold us back and create new ones that actually propel us toward the things that we want. So what do you think? Would you like some of that? I would. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So how does this subliminal soundtrack relate to this idea of trying things on to see how they fit? So if you're somebody who's functioning from this space of, when I make a decision, it is final and it is unchangeable, that kind of energy, right? Like, oh, you've made your bed, you need to now lie in it. Okay. Feel that for a second. Feel the heaviness of that and the weight that goes along with that decision-making process. It can be incredibly scary, right? If we believe that we're going to be stuck with this thing or bound to this thing for however long or the rest of our lives or whatever the case may be, if we have that energy around any decision, can you imagine how easy it's going to be for you to choose the thing that's light and sort of a contribution or those sorts of things? Can you feel how heavy that feels? You've made your decision. Now you get to lie in it. Now, I want to be really clear, because it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences. There are always consequences. And when we make a choice, we are also choosing those consequences. So it's important to have a process where you're sort of thinking those things through. And when we get to the third segment of the show, we are going to actually really dig into some of that. So Once again, it's another mini workshop. So grab yourself a pen and paper and be ready to take some notes. Also important to say that if for some reason you're not in a position where you can do that right now, just go to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com and search either Jackie Mott or Time to Rise and Thrive, and you will find every single episode. And there are some ones, particularly this year, that I am really, really pleased with. I'm very proud of the content and how it was delivered. So go back and have a look. You can go through any of them that you might like to look at. They are all there. So go to inspiredchoicesnetwork.com, find the episode you'd like, make sure you've got that pen and paper. And it's kind of nice to do that because then you can pause it, make a note, keep going, write down some stuff, journal, whatever. If there's something coming up for you as we're talking about something or as you're thinking something through, you can take all the time that you want. Isn't that nice? Yes, 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 yes. Okay. So on the flip side of this thing, if you are someone who believes that as we go through life, we grow, we change, we learn, all of that kind of stuff, and it's okay for us to change our mind. We are allowed to change our mind. It often will make those decision-making processes a lot lighter because we don't feel stuck or that bound thing. Do you understand what I mean? It's that energy of, okay, I can try this. I can try this and see how I like it. Maybe it's an activity. Think about that for a second. So I signed up for belly dancing lessons when I became single again. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. So a group of us got together, we sort of took over the class and we had a blast. But what if I hadn't liked belly dancing when I got in there? What if it was like, oh, this doesn't feel good? I'm allowed to change my mind. Do you see what I'm saying? You are always allowed to change your mind. And that's what we're talking about today. That's what we're talking about. So, a couple of things, that we're going to go into before we head to our first break is there are some decisions that we really need to be thoughtful about. Okay. So, particularly those kinds of decisions that might impact other people. And especially if we're talking about living situations, finances, that sort of thing. If we are in a position where we are making a choice for ourselves, we really need to consider other people that may be impacted by that choice as we are going through. Does that mean that you don't? No, absolutely not. You do what's right for you, but be aware of and prepared for that there may be some reaction from other parties who are involved in that situation. Always be ready for that. So when we go into a new situations, what often happens is we have sort of a snapshot of the situation. And if you think about a new job, for example, they're going to talk to you about what? They're going to talk to you about the wages. They're going to talk to you about the job responsibilities. They may talk to you about where you're going to be working, things like that. But you're going to get a snapshot of whatever that job is. There are so many things that we don't know until we get there, right? So what if you go into a place where you've got a manager who's always yelling and screaming at people, or there's that office politics and, you've got to sort of brush up. What is the word? You know what I'm talking about. You got to sort of play the game and get close to the people who are the ones that are going to make it pleasant, or it is going to be a nightmare. There could be things like gossip. There could be there's so many things that happen that can go wrong in a workplace, right? So we don't know about that stuff until we get there. This is why it's so very important for us to allow ourselves this space to reevaluate and make a different choice if we get there and we find that this is really not the thing that we thought it was going to be. Yes. So remember, you are free to choose. You are not free from the consequences of the choice that you make. There are always consequences. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And I don't really like good and bad, but sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're hard. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's always a consequence that goes along with everything. If I decide to own a car, I had better be prepared to pay for insurance, the gas, the maintenance, all of that kind of stuff. There are consequences to every single decision. every single choice that we make. So just be aware of that and be prepared for that. The other thing that I want to say just before we head to our break is it's important to consider that sometimes when things start going off the rails in our lives, in our relationships, in our work, in our whatever, sometimes things appearing to fall apart is actually things falling together. So if you have any belief in a higher power, which I do, if you have a belief in a higher power, sometimes when things just kind of go completely off track, it's the thing that needs to happen in order for you to do the other thing that is so much better for you. Okay. So try to, when things are going wrong, try to have a space of, okay, so what's right about this thing? What's right about this thing that's happening to me that I'm not getting it right now. Okay. That's another important piece to this. So I'm sorry, I've got a terrible tickle in my throat today. So I'm going to try not to have the froggy coming in, but who knows? So that's where we're going to leave it before we head to our first break. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. And when we come back, we are going to continue this conversation about something we don't hear a lot about. We have the right to change our minds. So stick with us for just a moment. We will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. Today, we are talking about something you don't hear very often. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change your mind. So let's get real about this thing. What is it that keeps us stuck? When we find ourselves in a situation where maybe it's a long-standing relationship, maybe it's a job with a pension plan, there's all kinds of reasons why people stick it out and stay in situations that maybe aren't really serving them anymore. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with people choosing to stay in those situations, unless, of course, we're talking about really, really unhealthy stuff, really, really unhealthy stuff. So one of the things that keeps us stuck, in my humble opinion, is that thing of we believe that decisions are final and binding. All right. So I was thinking about marriage when I was thinking about this morning, and really it's just been, the last 50 years or so when it's become possible for, or easier for people to, to divorce, to break up their marriage and go their separate ways. Prior to that, It was more like it was really hard to get out of. And I know this because I had a grandmother who was married until the day she died, but she hadn't been with my grandfather for decades, like I don't know, 40 years, 50 years, some craziness like that. It was a long, long time that she was still tied to him by that agreement, by that contract that we make. Now it's not quite so hard. It doesn't mean that it doesn't still have impact points. So again, as we go through this, we're going to be talking about that, the impact points for other people and what to do with that thing. So what often happens when we find ourselves in that sort of position where we feel like, oh my God, I have to make a decision and it's so hard and I don't know what to do. We can find ourselves in this like analysis paralysis. Have you heard that term? It basically means that we do nothing. So we just can't seem to sort it out. And therefore, we don't make a decision one way or the other. But the truth of the matter is that you're still making a decision by choosing not to make a decision. Does that make sense? So either to let it run its course or to stay there and tolerate the things that maybe you're not so happy you're tolerating, whatever it is, when we don't make a choice to change something, we are actually making a choice to not change something. Okay. So it's still all about that. You're making a choice and you are allowed to change your mind if you feel that it's the right thing. The other thing that is problematic when we find ourselves trying to make a big decision is we engage our mind. We engage that mind with the subliminal soundtrack and the belief systems and all of that stuff. And some of that stuff is very deeply ingrained, very deeply ingrained. So let's go back to this idea of the marriage, right? So it's possible for us to divorce, but if you were raised in maybe a religious family or community, or if you were raised with certain belief systems about, till death do us part. What does it mean when I make these promises, when I make these vows? What does it mean? It can still lead it to be a very difficult thing for you to choose because you're so stuck on that belief system that marriage is forever. Okay. And this was one of the things when my marriage fell apart. It was one of the things that I struggled with because that had been my experience growing up. Marriage is forever. I made promises. I took vows. Therefore, this is my person. And, it doesn't really matter whether I like him anymore. It doesn't really matter whether I feel good about this. It's I made promises and I made vows and that's it. Right. So that piece, the mind piece, is where we can often get stuck because the problem with the mind, like it's an amazing thing. It's an absolutely amazing thing. And it's really, its main job is to protect us, right? To identify different situations or threats and then know what to do with them. The problem is that our mind is limited to what it knows. Okay. So it's limited to the information that's already been provided. So consider it to be like a computer system, right? Whatever information is there is what it has to work with. The truth is that there could be millions of possibilities that are available, but we don't know about them. We don't know about them because we haven't experienced them. Do you see what I'm saying? There could be millions of possibilities that are happier, healthier, more fulfilling, and not just in relationships. This like career, this can be in any area of your life. There could be a career waiting for you that you didn't even know it was there. You didn't even know it was possible. I didn't know until a couple of years ago that it was possible for me to come on here on Friday afternoons and talk like this. I didn't know. And then that piece of information shows itself. Do you see what I'm saying? So when we are engaging only our mind, it can be problematic because our mind will tell us this is a bad decision because beep, beep, beep. And it's all that belief system. So one of the things that happened when I was really young, my grandmother was a very tiny lady, like one of those little tiny, you were scared you were going to break her if you squeezed her too hard, right? She was one of those ladies. And of course, by the time I came along, she was a bit on the older end. One of the things that I remember very, very clearly was a circumstance where she had been home by herself. And this man came to the door. I don't know what he was selling. It doesn't even matter what he was selling, but this man came to the door who was selling something and refused to take no for an answer. And it terrified my grandmother. Big man. She's this little tiny thing. She's at home by herself. He's very pushy. In fact, I think he even pushed his way into her home. So she was terrified and she went ahead with whatever it was that he was there to do. So the message that I got in that telling of that story, the relaying of that story, which may not have even been intended. It may not have even been intended, truthfully. But the message that I retained that got stuck back there for a very long time was that salesmen are pushy and mean and scary. So when I go into my own business and I need to sell my services, how do you think that impacted? It didn't impact well. It took a long time for me to sort of pull that apart and figure out what it was that was causing me the problem. And the fact of the matter is that sales doesn't have to be done that way. That is a way that some people do it, not a way that I would appreciate, but it doesn't have to be done that way. There are many different ways to do this same thing. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes. So that's the stuff that gets stuck back there. Those, especially when it's an emotional thing that's happened to somebody that you care about or happened to you, we can make a decision back there that says that's bad. This sales thing is bad because you're going to scare little old women. Do you see what I'm saying? So we get to pull that apart later. We get to pull that apart when we start to understand that that's what's causing the issue. That's what's causing that block that's preventing us from moving forward in a very positive direction. And then we get to work with it. Okay. So we decide what's possible and available, and we cut ourselves off from any other possibilities. Remember, there could be millions of possibilities out there that we're not aware of. But because we've decided how this is going to look, that's all that's possible for us. We won't even see it. And that's the thing. It might be standing right in front of you, but you won't see it because your mindset, it's decided that it's not. This is how it is, right? A plus B equals C, all of that kind of stuff. And I have a math brain, right? So some of this stuff has really taken me a lot of work to dissect and pull it apart. So another part of this that can keep us stuck is our judgments around what does it mean, right? What does it mean to make a promise or a commitment or a vow or anything like that? What does it mean? So again, that is one of those things that's living back there. If we feel like making this choice or this decision will cause us to be bound to, and I read like that is the best terminology. I don't like that. It doesn't feel good in my body, but that is the best terminology that I've been able to come up with. Then we will stick with things sometimes long past the time that we should release them. So there was a situation in the last couple of years. I signed up for this program, this group, this thing, and it didn't take very long. Like initially it looked amazing, like absolutely amazing. And it didn't take long for me to start to see the cracks. But because I was there, because I'd made that promise, that commitment, because there was money involved, because I stuck it out for many more months. And by the time I let it go, it had taken an emotional toll. It had taken an emotional toll on me, not to mention all of the other stuff, right? Not to mention all of the finances that have gone into it, all of that kind of stuff. And there have been other situations like that particularly in my business life. I've made a decision thinking it's the right direction for me to go, and then found that once I was there and doing the thing, it looked very different than what I thought it was going to look like in the beginning. Okay. So when we go through our steps in the next segment, this is one of the things that we're going to focus on, this evaluating and thinking things through and all of that kind of stuff. So another one is like, they need me. They can't do this without me. Very important for us to understand that there is not a single person on the planet who is irreplaceable. If, God forbid, something happened to me and I was no longer here to do the work I do, to, take care of the people that I choose to take care of, to all of those things, somebody else would walk in that would do those things, or they would find somebody else to come in and do those things. Do you see what I'm saying? We are not irreplaceable. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. You're not irreplaceable. There's somebody else. And quite frankly, if you're miserable doing it, somebody else might come in with a different mindset or a different belief system about this thing and be able to do it in a better way because, right? Because here they are and they're happy to be here. So take that pressure off yourself. Take the pressure off and just start to go into the space of, is this a good fit for me now at this stage of my life? The last thing that I want to address before we go into our next segment with all of the tips and tools and blah, blah, fear of backlash. So often when we find ourselves in a position where we know that there's a situation that we need to let go of, we know we need to extricate ourselves from that, we may be afraid of the backlash that might come. So some important things to consider about this is their feelings are not your responsibility. Now, once again, that does not mean that you don't have the consequences that go along with this, okay? But their feelings are not your responsibility. If you are clear that this thing that you are in is not good for you, it's not healthy for you, it's not going in the direction or giving you the benefit that you initially expected to receive from it, because the doing of it is different than the thinking about it, right? The fear of the backlash can hold us there. So their feelings are not your responsibility. Now, you want to be as professional, as respectful, as kind, as honoring as you can be when you are extricating yourself, but their feelings are not your responsibility. You don't have to, and this is vital, you do not have to engage with them. You also do not have to tolerate bad behavior. You don't have to tolerate having somebody say nasty things to you or any of that. If that ever happens, shut the door and shut it now, okay? Don't tolerate it. Don't go into that. That's their problem, not yours. You are not obligated to remain in a situation that it doesn't feel right or it's not healthy for you. You're not obligated. Your job is always to do what's right for you and to be as respectful of anyone else involved in this situation as you can be. Okay, so we're going to head to our next break. When we come back, we are going to get into those tips and tricks. Yay, grab that pen and paper if you haven't already. You are with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation about the thing that we don't always hear a lot about. You're allowed to change your mind. So stick with us for a moment. We'll be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Our subliminal soundtrack plays in the back of our minds 24/7. It's filled with everything we've ever learned about money, relationships, body, and sexuality, about every single aspect of our lives. If you don't have what you desire, the Subliminal Soundtrack Reset program may be the very key to changing it all. In this 8-week program, designed by Jackie Mott, you'll learn to replace messages that stop your desires with new ones that not only support you in creating what you truly desire, but expand your life to higher levels of joy and pleasure. Go to phoenixcoach.ca today to sign up and begin creating your life on purpose.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Time to Rise and Thrive show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now, back to the program.
Hello and welcome back to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I'm your host, Jackie Mott, mindset and empowerment expert. Today we are talking about this thing about you are always allowed to change your mind. So try things on and see if they fit. If they don't, it's okay. It's okay. So just before we get into, I'm going to give you one more minute to grab that pen and paper. Before we get into the meat of this thing, there's been a lot of stuff going on in my world, and the show has been evolving and changing as I've gone through. We've been actually doing the show now for over 2 years. Can you imagine? Who knew that I had that much to say? Well, I suppose some people probably did. At any rate, the show has been evolving and changing. My practice has been evolving and changing. And this is one of the reasons why, like, it's so important for us to understand this. Like, we're allowed to shift things. We're allowed, and sometimes it's not that we like walk away from something. Sometimes it's simply that we make adjustments. We just make adjustments and see if that will work. There's one point that I've made many, many times is a rocket that's on course to go to the moon is off course like 95% of the time. So it is constantly course correcting in order to arrive at the destination that has been, determined it's going to go to. It's constantly course correcting. And we are allowed to do that. We're allowed to course correct, especially as we grow, we change, we evolve. One of the things that really has been on my mind about this is especially the decisions that you made when you were really young. You're not the same person that you were when you made those decisions. I'm now 50 years old. I'm not the same person I was when I was 20 or 25, not even a little bit, thank God. Because again, that's sort of the goal, isn't it? We grow, we change, we become more as we go through our lives. We learn things that we didn't know, right? So it's an important thing to keep in the back of your mind. And now we are going to get into sort of the what do you do? What do you do, right? How do you change these things when you find yourself in this position? Now, the first thing that I'm going to say is it is very important for you to be kind to yourself, okay? Be kind to yourself as you're going through those things. Drop the stick, no judgment. And the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is getting clear on the decision that you're trying to make, clear on the choice that you are trying to make right now. Some questions to ask yourself. What do I know about this thing? What do I know right now? What is positive and what is negative? So you're gonna do one of those like pro-con lists, right? And you don't have to put it in that terminology. Whatever works for you works for me. Okay, but take some time, sit down with it, grab a piece of paper, make some notes. What feels positive right now? And what are the things that you're not really so sure are going to work out? Where do you expect this to lead? Where do you expect this to lead? Do you expect this to lead you to a new city, a new place, like geographically? Do you expect it to lead you on a completely new career path? Where is it going? Okay. And is that a direction that you would like to go? The next question that I'd like for you to ask yourself is, what is required of you? This is very important. So the situation that I talked about not very long ago, this group that I had sort of aligned myself with and then realized later that it wasn't really a good fit for me. What is going to be required of you? So one of the things in that particular situation was, of course, they had said, oh, this is going to take like 5 hours a month. And I thought, oh, okay, I can find 5 hours in my month. The reality of it once you got in there was that it was probably taking 20 hours a week. That's a vast difference in time commitment, isn't it? Vast difference in time commitment. What about the money? What kind of money are you going to need to invest? What kind of emotional or energetic investment is going to be required for you to do this? So these are the kinds of things that you want to get clear on, and maybe ask some questions. If it's something where there's a boss or a leader of some description, ask the questions. You're allowed to ask the questions, and don't ever feel like you're being rude. If you're looking for clarity in a situation before you decide to take that leap, you are allowed to ask those questions. So ask the hard questions. Stand up for yourself, kind of put on your big girl panties and ask the questions. Very important, very important. Second thing for us to do is our gut check. Now, whether or not you are aware of it, every one of us has this sort of internal radar, or somebody might call it an intuition, whatever language works. We have this internal sort of guidance system that tells us, don't do this, this is not a good thing for you, or just maybe hang back a little bit and see what happens here, because there's something that doesn't feel right. Okay, so do your gut check. Or does my gut and my heart leap for joy and say, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for? One of the things that's happened to me before every major life change that I've experienced is that I've felt something coming. It's the strangest thing. I can feel it coming, and sometimes it's like months out, right? When we first moved up to Trenton, Ontario, I had been up there visiting family. I don't even know. I'm going to say 6 months or maybe even a year before the move. And while I was driving around, I had this sort of sense of, oh, something is coming. And I had no idea that a circumstance was going to shift that was going to make moving to Trenton. No idea whatsoever. That was never an intended thing. It just, this happened. We got to go. And this is the best place. So you may have that happening already. There's something in your being that's saying, okay, there's some change, there's something, or something needs to change maybe. Okay. You will have something happening within you. You just have to get quiet and pay attention. Now it can show up as like an emotional feeling. It can show up as something in your body. Sometimes we get headaches. Some of us get headaches when there's a big thing happening. So it can show up in your body, it can show up in your spirit, your being, your whatever. So just pay attention to yourself and allow yourself to have that. Okay, my gut tells me this or this. One of the things that I always ask myself when I'm going into a really big decision is, what is the worst that could happen? What is the worst thing that could happen in this situation? And is that something that I'm willing to gamble on? Okay. So what's the worst thing? Because, when we've got that back there, then it's okay. Well, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it to go wrong. Not expecting it, not going in with those sort of ideas that this thing is not whatever. If I get an immediate feeling of this is not the right move, then immediately I say no. I don't even think about it. If there's something inside me that says this is bad, or stay away from that person, or any immediate. Okay. So these are situations where you don't have that immediate gut reaction of no, don't go there. All right. Number 3, consider, is this the only option or the best option to get where I want to be? And you're also going to do that gut check with this question. So is it the only option? Is it the best option? There could be millions of possibilities out there. So is this the only way for me to accomplish the thing that I want to do? If you're looking at different school choices for a program or different, and most of my certifications, I've done a fair bit of research before I've made a decision on which company to go with, and whatever those things were that caused me to decide to go in that direction. There were many things that I chose not to. So do your research, do your gut check, consider that. Is this the best option? Pardon me. Oh, 4. The fourth tip, seek guidance. So this is not, I'm not asking you for advice. Okay. And I'm not going to my, my best friend or my family member or whatever. I'm going to someone who knows what they're doing. I'm going to someone who has experience in that area. So if it's a business decision, then I'm going to go to business people and ask for their thoughts on things. So I'm going to ask for their guidance and remember that I am the person who ultimately is making whatever decision that is, and it is ultimately my responsibility. So I'm getting the information. Sometimes somebody will have a different perspective that you hadn't considered, or they'll know something that you're not already aware of, and they can throw that information into the mix. And that helps us to make a better decision. It does not mean that that person is responsible for the decision that we've made. It is still your responsibility. You will deal with the consequences. Don't ever take someone else's advice or judgment over your own. You know what's right for you, even if you're not sure about that yet. And there are people out there that can help you sort through that. I'm one of them. This is something I'm pretty good at. We sort through the kind of get rid of all the mess and get down to brass tacks, and we figure out what the best direction is. The last thing, so number 5, the last thing I'm going to give you is, if you go ahead, then your job is to evaluate. Once you're there, evaluate, then reevaluate, then reevaluate. If you're talking about one of those job circumstances where, you get in there and at first everybody's nice and lovely and funny and so on and so forth, and then it takes you maybe 2-3 weeks or a month to see there's something going on over there. That person is bringing this stuff to the table, and I didn't know it yet. Give yourself permission to reevaluate and reevaluate as the information comes up. There was one situation years ago. I had moved to Alberta and I was living there for a while. I went into this job and it was supposed to be a temp position. It was supposed to be to cover the mat leave of the daughter of, it was a family business, right? So I was covering the mat leave of their daughter. And when I took the job, I had been told, based on my training, my experience, my education, blah, 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 that I would be in line to move up to a different position. So I was covering that mat leave, but when she came back, I would be moving into a different position. There would be different benefits, like medical, and the salary would be different, and so on and so forth. So when I walked into that job, my intention was to do the best job I could in that position and then be ready to move up. Right before her mat leave ended, the decision was made by the parents and probably her that rather than me moving up into that position, I'd done such a great job on her job that they were going to leave me there. So that caused me to change my mind, because my intention was never to stay in this particular position. And that's not what we discussed. So I left that job and went on and started something completely different that was a much better fit for me. So as the new information becomes available, allow yourself to evaluate and reevaluate as often as you need to, and always doing that gut check. Yeah, there we go. Does it still feel like the right situation? That was the thing that I wanted to ask. Does it still feel like this situation is right for me, or moving me in the direction of the thing that I am pursuing? Because sometimes we do these things for experience. Sometimes we do these things for, it's like a stopgap. It's in between things. We know we're going to move on to something else at some point. So is it still moving me in that direction? If I had stayed in that particular job that I just was talking about, then I would have been stuck in this entry level position. And I had 10 years plus multiple, credentials and so on and so forth. It just was not the right thing for me to stay in an entry level position with that company moving forward. Okay. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to be thinking about and discussing with people and working through as you decide, is this a situation that I need to walk away from? Is this a situation that it would be good for me to involve myself with? Is this something where maybe just a little bit of conversation, a little bit of honesty, a little bit of honor for the other person, and we're going to be able to, it's going to be tickety boo. Maybe I just need to express how I feel, right? Honestly, honoring yourself and everybody else involved. So depending on the circumstances, those are the kinds of things that you're going to be working with. Now, again, if you did not have a chance to make notes on that stuff, go back and find us on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com and rewatch the video or listen to the recording, whatever it is that fits best for you. Take the time to make those notes. If there's something that's resonating on any of the shows, go back and listen to it again, because there's something that's percolating there that maybe you're not quite aware of yet. It's that, like, I know it's coming, but I don't know what it is, right? So allow yourself that time and that space. So now we're at the point in the show where we do our sort of summarizing of what we've talked about. Here's the thing. You are always, always, always allowed to change your mind. Always. Okay. You are not the same person that you were. Again, I became a mom when I was 17 years old. I am absolutely not the same person at this stage in my life that I was then. So the decisions that I was making at that point in my life were being made by a completely different person. Do you understand? I'm a different person now. So what would I choose now? What would be a good fit for me now in any area of your life? You get to choose what's right for you and where you're going to spend your resources. So the resources that I'm talking about here are, they're things that we can't get back. It could be money, it could be time, it could be energy, it could be whatever it is. But those are the sorts of things, those are your resources that you need to protect. So what is going to be involved? What am I going to have to give in exchange for whatever it is that's going on? If there's a backlash, I'm going to hit this one more time before we wrap up the show. If there's a backlash, just stand in your truth while being as kind as possible to anybody else involved in the situation. You aren't required to stay there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're not required to stay there. They are allowed to have their feelings, and you don't get to tell them how they should feel. They have the right to feel whatever they feel. They have the right to think however they think. It doesn't change what you do, but don't try to tell them that they're wrong for feeling a certain way. That's theirs. Okay? That's theirs to deal with. That's theirs to own, not yours. So that is what we have for you today. Quote that I want to leave you with. As we learn and grow, sometimes the situations and relationships we currently have no longer serve us, and that's okay. The person who made that decision was a different person than you've become. You're wiser and smarter than you once were. Allow yourself the space and time to consider whether or not it's the right fit. And if it's not, choose something different. It's always your choice. What do you choose? So thank you so much for being with me on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. We will be back next Friday and every other Friday that I know of so far. We'll be here at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 Mountain and 10 Pacific. And next week's show is called What Do You Deserve? What do you deserve? We're going to be talking in that show about how taking the focus off others can actually create more for you to give to the people that you care about. Now, one thing that I actually forgot to mention, so if you're still with me, the first 5 of you who decide to take action right now, go to www.bookacallwithjackie.com. If you are struggling with this or any other mindset issues, if you're feeling stuck in your life and you're not sure how to move forward, go and book that call. The first 5 people who do will get a free Unstoppable You intensive session with me. It is my gift to you for taking action and taking action now. So go and www.bookacallwithjackie.com. You can also find me on jackiemott.com. You can find me on Facebook, Jackie Mott, Mindset and Empowerment Expert, and of course on inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. So thanks again so much for your time, for your interest in what we're talking about. I hope that something that we've discussed today has helped you shift your thinking just a little bit to make things easier for you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your being with me, and I just love this time of the week. So until next week, and I hope I see you back, have a wonderful week.
Thank you for joining us for Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. Jackie Mott will return next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Have a fantastic week, and remember, it's your time to rise and thrive.